And it's not the job of politicians to be praying. You want to go home and pray, you go ahead and do that. But it's the job of elected officials and politicians to act, to be lawmakers, to actually help people, to give aid to people. But if you ask Mike Johnson about the Texas floods, what does he want everybody to do? Pray. Have a listen to this.
State and federal resources have just poured into that area. Is there anything more that can be done congressionally, legislatively to help these folks?
In a moment like this, we feel just as helpless as everyone else does. I've talked to my colleagues there in Texas, Chip Roy and August Pfluger, whose families, that's Chip's district. August's daughters were at the camp. We also had Betty Carter of Georgia, had grandchildren there. It touches so many families, and all we know to do at this moment is pray. Every available resource has been deployed. The president, of course, is dialed in and watching this develop moment by moment as we are, and we'll handle supplemental funding requests as they come in, but right now they're still trying to do rescue and recovery, and our hearts go out to all of them.
Interesting, isn't it? When a catastrophic event happens, why is it always MAGA Republicans that want to talk about praying? Well, guess what? If you want to pray, you go ahead and pray. Hey, dummy, you're a lawmaker. You're supposed to act. You guys are the ones that want to get rid of FEMA. You guys are the ones with DOGE that cut the NOAA. Over 800 employees were either forced into retirement, resigned, fired, you name it. And we want to hear from you telling us to pray? No, that's for the pastors. The victims' families and friends, if they want to pray, let them pray. That's not for you to tell us to do. Your job is to act and help. And every single time there is a tragedy, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. But Republicans don't do anything. In fact, they want to take away benefits, and make no mistake about it. The benefits that are being taken away from FEMA to help victims are going into crocodile Alcatraz. Alligator Alcatraz. So many of these people that are nonviolent criminals, by the way. That's where they're allocating these funds. They want to ban books, and they want to put all these funds towards Alligator Alcatraz instead of helping these families that have lost loved ones. And we got to hear from Ted Cruz talk about empathy, which he has none. We got to hear from Greg Abbott, who cared more about making money off of his fundraising event the day of the Uvalde shooting. That's the guy we want to hear talk about empathy and prayers, thoughts and prayers. These people have no empathy. They have no moral compass. They're despicable. They're disgusting. Yes, my heart goes out to all these victims. It's horrible. They should have been warned. But Donald Trump wants to blame Joe Biden. He wants to bring up Joe Biden. Every single time there's a natural disaster, they want to blame Gavin Newsom for the fires in California. They wanted to blame Joe Biden for the fires in Hawaii. But if it's under Donald Trump's watch, can't be his fault. Don't make it political. Then there comes the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who has no backbone. And all he seems to care about is attacking transgenders, attacking homosexuality, talking about the Bible, and talking about how he monitors the porn that his son watches, and vice versa. Mike Johnson's a weirdo. He's a spineless coward. And here's Mike Johnson once again, as many of these evangelicals do because they're all idiots, as they talk about God miraculously saving the president's life, because I guess this week it was the anniversary of the first assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Remember when Donald Trump got a boo-boo on his ear? Remember when he had a little bit of a bloody ear? I don't know if it was a catch-up packet or not, but let's just assume it was real for a moment. Maybe a glass fragment, whatever. And do you remember when these bozos at the Republican National Convention were wearing tampons on their ears, looking like the cultist idiots that they are? Because that's what they are. They're all a bunch of cultist idiots. And Donald Trump the next day decided to play golf with no bandage on his ear. Somehow his ear magically grew back. And then he wears this tampon bandage on his ear at the Republican National Convention because he wants to look like some martyr or hero. And these cultist sicko fans are wearing these tampons on their ears or whatever the hell you'd want to call it, looking like the idiots that they are. All a bunch of bozos, all a bunch of clowns. And now you have Mike Johnson talking about God, because that should be used in the same sentence with the orange orangutan adjudicated rapist. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, talking about God, how God miraculously saved the president's life. But apparently he didn't save the life of a firefighter that was in the crowd. God didn't care about the firefighter, regardless of his political beliefs, was a hero because he was a firefighter who saved lives. But God said, no, I don't want to save the hero firefighter. I want to save the adjudicated rapist 34-count felon. That's how much of a moron these right-wing evangelical idiots are that think God saved Donald Trump. Here's what Mike Johnson had to say about that.
Social media platforms removed his ability to communicate with his supporters. Armed FBI agents raided his home. Democrat judges and prosecutors bent the law to arrest him, and multiple assassins tried to kill him. But God miraculously spared the president's life. I think it's undeniable, and he did it for an obvious purpose. And his presidency and his life are the fruits of divine providence, and he points that out obviously now all the time, and he's right to do so. As President Trump has lived since, with the acknowledgement every day since, he has acknowledged that each new day isn't guaranteed to us. It isn't to any of us, and that's why we're not wasting any time. It's why he remains so strong and resilient. It's why we have such a sense of urgency. President Trump took a bullet to his head. He got up shortly thereafter. He pleaded with the crowd to fight, and then he went on to win a historic election less than 4 months later. America's changed because he survived that day.
Absolutely ridiculous. What a sicko cult these Trump people are. If there is a God out there, which I certainly hope there is, I'm pretty sure God wouldn't want to cover up sexual abuse of children, which is exactly what the Donald Trump administration is doing. If there is a God out there, I'm sure his first priority wouldn't be saving the life of a 34-count convicted felon rapist, a man who's cheated on every single woman he's ever been with, who holds a Bible upside down and claims it's his favorite book and can't name one passage in the Bible. I'm pretty sure if there is a God out there, this is not the person that God would try to save. But if you're a right-wing evangelical cultist sicko fan of Donald Trump, this is the way you think. No mention of the firefighter who lost his life, though. Don't want to talk about that. And then Mike Johnson decided to talk about NPR and PBS. He started to talk about misuse of taxpayer dollars. Because when you talk about misuse of taxpayer dollars, the average normal person, the first thing they'll think about, right, is NPR and PBS. But there's a kicker to this. And before I play this audio from this idiot, Mike Johnson, I want to remind all of you that it was actually the GOP that controlled Congress that allocated the tax dollars in the first place for NPR and PBS. So he's literally criticizing his own people. And this is Mike Johnson going after NPR and PBS yesterday.
The NPR and PBS components this is in our view the misuse of taxpayer dollars. They're biased reporting. They're not objective. They pretend to be so. They have for a long time, and the people don't need to fund that. I mean, we're in an age of you all know, you work in the industry. I mean, media is so multifaceted now. There's so many avenues and areas for information, and while at its origination NPR and PBS might have made some sense. And maybe it does now, but it shouldn't be subsidized by taxpayers. So these are simple questions to answer for us. The House has acted appropriately, and I hope the Senate will do the same. I've urged them, as I always do, to please keep the product unamended because we have a narrow margin and we got to pass it. But we're going to process whatever they send us whenever they send us, and I'm hopeful that it'll be soon.
Absolutely ridiculous. Let's not talk about the 15 million people that are going to lose Medicaid. Let's not talk about the $10 billion that they're taking away from food benefits, people that desperately need food put on the table. Let's talk about saving money by defunding NPR and PBS. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's insane. Mike Johnson is losing his mind, the House Speaker. So apparently Elon Musk is not taking Mike Johnson's phone call. But earlier today, Mike Johnson said that they exchanged a few text messages, but Mike Johnson has tried to call Elon and he has not picked up the phone. Listen to what Mike Johnson had to say about, I guess, for lack of a better term, the lack of communication or little communication that they've had.
I don't know. We were going to talk about the bill, obviously, but can we at least touch on this and what you know? I thought you were supposed to have a conversation yesterday with Elon. Did that happen, or was it just texts?
Well, we exchanged text messages yesterday. I spoke with him at length on Monday, and that's why the kind of the blow up that happened this week was very surprising, disappointing to me. We had a very friendly conversation. I really like Elon. He's a friend. I've come to truly respect his acumen. The Doge effort was heroic, patriotic, helped us find a lot of savings and abuses that Congress was not able to uncover previously. So huge contributions. And look, we can have policy differences. We have that here in this building, every day, but it's not personal. It shouldn't be personal. I don't tell my friend Elon I don't argue with him about how to build rockets, and I wish he wouldn't argue with me about how to craft legislation and pass it. But we've had some good discussion. I thought it was helpful, fruitful, but it's just disappointing. I hope it all resolves today. Look, these are two titans. I respect them both. I'm of course a huge fan and supporter of President Trump. I was with him in the Oval Office yesterday afternoon when some of this was unfolding, and he was disappointed. I was disappointed. I just hope it resolves quickly for the sake of the country.
Yeah, it's not going to resolve quickly, you imbecile. You ass-kissing imbecile. You. Mike Johnson is losing his mind. And here's more evidence, if you don't believe me, that this guy's losing his mind. So as you know, there are ICE agents across the country, and the law says they have to tell these people who they are. That is a law. You can't just arrest somebody and deport somebody. You have to tell them who you are. You have to tell them you're an ICE agent. But apparently across the country, they're defying the Constitution and the rule of law. Mike Johnson was asked about this, and then he tried to compare it to mask wearing. This is a really weird response. And I think when you're extremely stressed out and you're incompetent, clearly Mike Johnson is, this is the way you respond to a question like this, which is absurd and ridiculous.
From the people who mandated mask wearing for years in America, it's absurd. They need to back off of ICE and respect our agents and stop protesting against them.
You're okay with these agents sort of not identifying themselves when they're arresting migrants?
Why? So that they can target them? So they can put their names and faces online and dox them? That's what these activists do.
What is he talking about? When you're law enforcement and you have a search warrant, you have to identify yourself. If you're pulled over by a police officer, the police officer has to give you their badge number. Same thing with ICE agents, where you have to at least say who you are. You can't just barge down someone's door and go in there. You have to identify yourself. That is the way our laws work. It's called the rule of law in our Constitution. And somehow Mike Johnson is totally okay with them not doing that and just going into homes and arresting people without identifying themselves and telling people who they are. So apparently Mike Johnson's totally okay with that. Apparently he's totally cool with that. Mike Johnson is losing his mind. Many people within the MAGA base are also losing their mind. This is not going to get better. And this was not a staged thing between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. This wasn't something where either of them are benefiting from this. Certainly Donald Trump is not benefiting from this. The Republicans are not benefiting from this. Elon Musk is certainly not benefiting from this. The guy's lost hundreds of billions of dollars because of this rift that they've gotten into. These are two sociopaths. We need to remind ourselves, okay? Donald Trump and Elon Musk are two sociopaths. These are bad people. They're liars. They're egomaniacs. And they're going to continue to go at one another, whether it benefits them financially or not. I'm not sure at this point they even care.